What if the photo you just posted online was the last picture you would ever take? November 15th, 2017. Sydney Loof, a 24-year-old Nebraska girl with blue eyes, dimples, and a wide smile, pressed upload on Snapchat. Her caption was simple: ready for a date. She looked confident, excited, hopeful. Her friends thought it was just another night out. Her mom thought she looked beautiful, but uneasy. What no one knew was that behind that smile, Sydney had just walked into a trap. 2 days later, her phone went dark. Her cat, left alone without food or water. Her car untouched. And Sydney, gone. What followed was a frantic search across small-town Nebraska. Flyers, vigils, desperate parents clinging to hope. But what investigators uncovered was far more terrifying than anyone could have imagined. The girl she thought she was meeting on Tinder wasn't real. It was a mask, a lure. Behind it stood a man who called himself a vampire, and a young woman willing to help him hunt. Together, they built a twisted fantasy, and Sydney became their prey. Tonight, we unravel the chilling story of Sydney Loof, a case that began with an innocent swipe right and ended with one of the most disturbing murder trials Nebraska has ever seen. Stay with me, because what happens next will shock you. What if the date you're about to go on would be the last of your life? Would you cancel or would you take the risk? In 2017, 24-year-old Sydney Loof swiped right on Tinder and stepped straight into the hands of two killers who weren't who they claimed to be. Tonight, we'll unravel the shocking story of how a bright, free-spirited young woman was lured into a nightmare. A story of fake identities, bleach-soaked rooms, and a self-proclaimed vampire cult leader. This is not just another case. This is a warning. And the ending is darker than anyone imagined. Welcome to True Crime Records. If you're new here, we cover chilling real-life cases with all the twists and turns left intact. Make sure to subscribe, hit the bell, and let's dive into the story. Sydney Irene Loof was the kind of person who filled a room with light. Born in Nebraska, she grew up active, athletic, and outdoorsy. Even when scoliosis ended her sports career, she found new passions: theater, creativity, and caring for animals. She loved her family deeply, texting her mom goodnight every single evening. But by her mid-20s, Sydney was searching for something more. Love, companionship, maybe just someone who truly understood her. That search would lead her to Tinder. On November 11th, 2017, Sydney matched with Audrey, a 25-year-old blonde who seemed sweet, fun, and down to earth. Their chat was effortless. Within days, they met for their first date. Sydney came home glowing. She told friends it felt natural, exciting. But beneath the surface, doubts lingered. Sydney confided to a coworker that she worried Audrey might be in a relationship with a man, maybe just looking for a third. Sydney had fallen into that trap before, and she feared history might repeat itself. Yet when Audrey texted again, Sydney agreed to a second date. Before leaving, she snapped a selfie. White blazer, cream blouse, smiling. She posted it on Snapchat with the caption, "Ready for a date." Her mom saw the photo and felt a chill. She asked, "What date?" Sydney never answered. The next morning, Sydney didn't show up for work. Her phone was silent. She hadn't texted her mom goodnight, breaking a lifelong ritual. Alarm spread quickly. Her parents drove 3 hours to Lincoln, desperate for answers. At Sydney's apartment, her car was in the driveway. Inside, her purse sat on the table. But her cat Nimsy was starving, no food, no water. Sydney adored that cat. She would never have left it. This wasn't a night out gone long. This was something darker. Sydney's best friend Brooklyn took matters into her own hands. She downloaded Tinder, searching for Audrey. Hours passed until she saw the same smiling face Sydney had shown her. But Audrey was no Audrey. Her real name was Bailey Boswell, a 23-year-old woman living in Wilbur, Nebraska, with her much older boyfriend, 51-year-old Aubrey Trail. The police dug deeper. Neighbors had noticed an overwhelming stench of bleach coming from Bailey and Aubrey's apartment the very night Sydney disappeared. And when investigators finally entered, the walls were scrubbed spotless. Receipts showed recent purchases of bleach, trash bags, duct tape, and baking sheets. This wasn't housekeeping. This was cover-up. Who exactly were Bailey Boswell and Aubrey Trail? The deeper detectives looked, the stranger it became. Aubrey fancied himself a vampire. He told women he could fly, read minds, and that killing made one a true witch. Together, he and Bailey ran scams, recruited vulnerable women, and lived in a twisted fantasy world of control and blood rituals. Former members of their so-called coven came forward. They recalled Aubrey fantasizing about killing, recording it, and even selling snuff tapes. Most had left before things escalated. Sydney was not so lucky. On December 4th, 2017, police searching a remote gravel road made a horrific discovery. Trash bags. Inside were dismembered human remains. One arm bore a tattoo Sydney cherished. Everything will be wonderful someday. But that day would never come. Sydney's body had been cut into 14 parts. Many organs were missing. Strangulation was determined as the cause of death. The bleach, the receipts, the lies all pointed to Bailey and Aubrey. Both were arrested. Aubrey confessed, then changed his story, claiming Sydney died accidentally during erotic play. But surveillance showed them buying saws and supplies before the date. At trial, witnesses described his obsession with killing. In a bizarre outburst, Aubrey slit his throat in the courtroom, screaming Bailey was innocent. He survived, but the jury wasn't swayed. In 2021, Aubrey Trail was sentenced to death. Bailey Boswell received life without parole. Sydney Loof's story is one of innocence meeting calculated evil. It's also a warning. Behind a smiling profile picture, anyone could be hiding. But here's the most chilling question of all. Did Bailey Boswell truly believe in Aubrey's cult, or was she just as manipulative as he was? The answer might be darker than the crime itself. The trial of Aubrey Trail and Bailey Boswell didn't just reveal a murder. It uncovered something darker, an obsession with control, violence, and a sick fantasy of power that destroyed a young woman's life. In the courtroom, Aubrey sat with a twisted calm. Sometimes explosive, sometimes smiling, as if enjoying the spectacle. At one point, he even tried to slit his own throat in front of the jury, a final performance from a man who thrived on shock. Bailey Boswell, on the other hand, remained quiet. To some, she looked like a victim, under his control. To others, she was just as guilty, a willing accomplice who helped lure Sydney to her death. The jury made their decision. Aubrey Trail was sentenced to death. Bailey Boswell became the first woman in Nebraska to face the death penalty. Justice, some said, had been served. But for Sydney's family, no sentence could ever bring back the daughter, the sister, the friend they had lost. Her mother still remembers the last text she got from Sydney. Her friends still scroll past her old photos, frozen in time. Her cat waiting at home those first 2 nights, never understanding why she didn't come back, and all of it began with a single swipe on Tinder. Think about that. One decision, one meeting, and an entire future was stolen. Sydney's story is a reminder. Behind every profile picture could be something far more dangerous. Behind every smile could be a mask. She was just 24. She had dreams, friends, a family that loved her. And yet, her story ended in silence. But tonight, as we tell her story, her voice is heard once more. The last photo she posted wasn't just the end of her life. It became evidence, a digital memory that thousands of people around the world would see. A final smile that still speaks louder than her killers ever could. Sydney Loof deserved so much more than this ending. And her story reminds us of a haunting truth. Evil doesn't always come from the shadows. Sometimes it comes from the people who smile at you. The ones who say all the right things. The ones who promise love, adventure, excitement. And by the time you realize the truth, it's already too late. So the question is, how well do you really know the people you trust?